Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where the Commander crew discusses Commander-related topics. And today we got a hot one because we're going to be talking about the ban list. Yay! Wanted to talk about this one again.
It's that time of the year again, huh?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, as always, joining me, I'm joined by three other co-hosts. We're going to go around the table. First is the one person in Commander who probably loves drawing cards even more than me. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How's it going?
Good, Tomer. How are you today?
Oh, I'm excited.
Gonna be a good one. I'm excited for this podcast too.
All right. Next up, we have the one player who you should never ever search your library for if he has black and 2 other mana up. It's Krim. How's it going, Krim?
It's going well. I'm pretty excited for the topic at hand today, and also I feel like my introduction next time should be, and the one person who wants to stop drawing as much as Seth wants to draw.
The one person who wants Hull Breach or unbans.
Yes,
he's just picketing outside of the RC's house.
Yes. You all hear me? He needs to be free.
Fair magic. All right. And next up, we got Richard, the person who loves the puppy that draws cards. I think the Elvish Visionary. New staple in white.
Doggish Visionary?
You should read the
Doggish
comments.
Visionary.
People are not pleased with you poo-pooing on the best puppers.
Everyone backed Richard up on that too.
fine.
Everyone backed him up.
Yeah, roast me in the comments section. That's what I wanted to be roasted about in this particular podcast. All right, so as you can guess from the title and the intro, we're going to be discussing the ban list, and not a specific ban, but we're going to be talking about the ban list in general, the Commander ban list in general. Are we happy with the ban list overall? Are we? What type of goals do we want the ban list to achieve? And do we think it's currently achieving those goals? And if the rules committee is doing a good job upholding, the health of the format in general? So we're going pretty deep here. But before we jump into the topic at hand, there's a couple of things you can do to help this channel grow. The first thing is if you're watching this on YouTube, or you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening to it, you can like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And the other way you can help us grow is by heading over to MTG Goldfish merch store, mtggoldfishmerch.com. You can pick up all the sweet playmats that are stapled on Richard's wall. You can get deck sleeves, you can get deck boxes, you can get tokens, and so much more. T-shirts and cool swag that you can actually wear at mtggoldfishmerch.com. All right. So topic at hand. This kind of was brought about because there was a yearly update to the ban list. So the Rules Committee does a yearly report on if there's going to be any changes, and they don't necessarily have to make any changes. And in this case, there was no changes. So they made an update very recently, like 2 weeks ago. No changes, and they gave an explanation why. You can find the full link to their explanation down below. But there's like a quote that I'm going to be reading out, just the kind of sparked this whole podcast in general. So when discussing the fact that they're not going to make any changes, they say, quote, there are several cards which are popular topics of concern on the internet, such as Tergrid, God of Fright, Dockside Extortionist, and Thassa's Oracle, but none of them have reached problematic levels of play in our target demographic. Games governed by a strong social contract. The RC feels that all of them can be handled via discussion among players before a game, and that it's not too difficult to draw a line between reasonable and unreasonable uses. For groups where no social contract exists, this is more challenging, but building trust via communication continues to be the best tool players have to create an enjoyable game. And then they also updated their FAQ on the social contract. What is the social contract? And they define it as the social contract is often implemented/interpreted as the importance of the players having a conversation before each game starts to make sure everyone understands each player's expectation about their desired experience. Communicate what you enjoy about Commander, what you're hoping or not to see in the game, such as specific cards, length of games, or general strategies, then change plans a bit if necessary. So the main takeaway here is that the ban list, the purpose of the ban list is it's aiming it at people who have playgroups that already have an established social contract. That was my takeaway from it. I read it verbatim, and that's my main takeaway. What does everybody think about that? Starting with Richard.
Yeah, so the way the RC defines a social contract doesn't necessarily mean playgroup, right? You're supposed to sit down and have this conversation, and the way they phrase it, it sounds like a very long conversation, right? Like, what do you hope to achieve, and what cards do you want to see, right?
Where would you like to be in 5 years? Give me your
exactly,
5-year
right?
plan.
And,
How many turns? would you
realistically,
like to
I don't
see?
think anyone actually does that. Like, the conversation, I think, lasts literally 20 seconds max, right? Like, the one-line description people put in Moto rooms? It's just like, power level 8, no infinites or something, right? Or like, power level, I'm playing pre-cons. My deck is like $10 max, right? Like, that's literally the extent of the conversation. So I agree we should have that conversation. But sitting down and being like, well, how does everyone think about the top 20 lists of saltiest cards that are not banned, right? Like, I think that is not realistic. And for some reason, the RC thinks it is. And also, some people don't want to talk. I know this is shocking, but you may not be, a very social person. You want to just play a game. Maybe playing a game is how you socialize. So maybe you don't want to come in and have this big, debate over various philosophies on gameplay, right? So it seems a bit of a cop-out.
The expectation doesn't seem super realistic to me as far as having this huge conversation. I don't think I would want to do it. And then if you get into like judging your cards power and your deck's power, that's really hard. Like, I'm bad at that, and I've been playing Magic in Commander for a long time. And if someone asks me like my deck's power level, I always just usually say 7 because I have no idea, and that's a nice like round number that makes sense. The other thing is, like, do we even need ban lists for groups that like have this strong social contract? Like, to me, this seems so backwards. Like, I grew up playing basketball, and we would play what we called barn ball, which was kind of just me and my friends more or less murdering each other in the backyard with very minimal rules. Like, people were getting kind of tackled and smashed, and we all loved it. We didn't need the official basketball rules because we were all friends and we had like a social contract. So we didn't need, the NBA RC telling us, do or don't do this. But then if I went and played a pickup game in a gym with a bunch of strangers, I definitely wanted there to be some amount of rules involved. So we all had like, the same expectations. So it seems backwards to me that you'd base your ban list on what works for games that do have a strong social contract, because those are the games that need the guidance of what cards are, good and bad to play, I think, the least compared to games that don't have that strong social contract.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes a lot more sense, right? I mean, like, why are we spending more time, like why are we just going out and, I don't know, putting a ban list on a group that already knows what they want and don't want to play against, right? So it is kind of weird. I do think that this is something where I would wish that the rules, the RC would kind of just be a little more hands-on about, and it'll be a little more aggressive about, just like, here's the ban list, and, like, you go play. That's it. And I want them to be a little more aggressive about banning and unbanning things.
Because if you ban Thassa's Oracle or you ban Dockside Extortionist and there's a group with a strong social contract that really likes it, they're going to play it anyway. Like, on Commander Clash, if there was no ban list whatsoever, our games would be just as fun and would work out just as well because we all know each other's play styles and we have that social contract. So, I don't know. It just seems so backwards. Like, I don't even know the logic of that, like what they're thinking to base their bannings on that.
This is kind of the reason why, like, as soon as I read this particular update, I felt like we had to talk about it because, like you guys said, I think this, like, the aim of the ban list is literally the opposite of what their stated goal is. Their stated goal is to have a ban list that is for people who already have a strong social norms and understanding of what they want out of a Commander game. But those are the exact people who do not need a ban list. Like you said, we we've played together Commander Clash so many times. We've gone through basically what we do and do not want out of a game experience. We've done, the expropriates. We've done stuff that we were like, you know what? Maybe we should avoid playing this style of game in the future. We figured all that stuff out for us, and there's plenty of cards that aren't explicitly banned that we're going to avoid, but there's also plenty of banned cards that we'd probably just give it a shot if we want to, if it fits our group. So the ban list is not useful for us. The ban list is for people who don't have a good social understanding, people who are at pickup games, who are going to an LGS, playing with people that they're not too familiar with, that they haven't actually had a chance to actually, play their games out and figure out what is good and bad for that particular play group. People who are going to conventions and meeting strangers that way, or people who are playing on Magic Online, where again you're just doing pickup games, and also you don't really have a choice on whether or not you have a ban list because the Magic Online community just has bans. You can't do your own version of it. So those are the groups that need the most help. Like the people who are new to the game and stuff like that need to understand like the basic environment that we're trying to cultivate here. And man, when they said it was for just social, for people who already had social social settings and figured all that stuff out already, it's like, how do you miss that much? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so why would the ban list even exist if that's your perspective? Like, that's the weirdest thing for me with all this, is like, if that's your perspective, that you're doing this for people that have the, a social contract and these, set, they're played by this set of rules, why do we even need the RC? Like, why do we need any of this? Like, it seems so ridiculous.
I think their intent is, here are some loose rules, but we strongly encourage you to talk amongst the players to determine your custom set of rules. I think like that's what they're trying to say, but like you guys all said, like if you're newbies, you don't know what to talk about. Maybe you don't know this card is broken, so you're not even going to bring it up. Maybe you don't want to have a 20-minute long conversation. Like, I think their reason is flawed, but I believe that's the reason, right? The reason is, here's some loose guidance. We're not the creators of Magic or something, right? Like you guys are the people playing, so you guys decide, but here's what we think, and take that with an asterisk. But that asterisk is so big, it's useless. So you might as well just not say anything, right?
It's also like what exactly are trying to accomplish with their ban list, because they don't really have a explicit guideline on what things get banned and what don't. They've given hints and vague comments on what they consider ban-worthy. Usually the two words they say are like cultivate an unfun environment, which again, this is purely subjective, and then also is ubiquitous, whereas that card shows up a lot. But when then you look at the actual ban list, like we've done 2 podcasts going through every single card, and we're like, most of these cards would not be played and would not be an issue at the table. I remember like we talked about, like they recently unbanned Worldfire, and there was a big hubbub about it being like, is this going to ruin, most play groups? Is this going to show up all over the place? Was there any good reason to unban it? Like, is it a net positive for the format? Worldfire unbans. We saw it played in Commander Clash one time as a finisher, and it succeeded as a finisher. I've seen it in the wild, I think maybe one time as a finisher again, and that's it. Like, who's talking about Worldfire after it got banned? Nobody. It doesn't get played. So it's like, and then you look at like the rest of the stuff they have on the ban list, like Coalition Victory and like Biorhythm and stuff, and they're just like, they don't have consistency in their rule set, and it's like, why even have rules? Like, if they're not consistent and we don't know what their basis is, they're just off the table because, and then if there are problematic cards, then you should figure it out with your play group, I guess. And it's like, why does it exist? I don't know. I'm confused.
What do you guys think about the expectation of having a conversation before the game, and like the amount of conversation? Is that something that happens in other games? Like, is that something that people playing games want to like have this social contract that they set up to play the game, or do you just want to like have a board game night and sit down and like play a game, or go to a local game store and play a game? Like, I don't know, to me, is that do you think that's normal in the world of gaming, or is this a unique thing to Commander where we have this social contract rule before the game starts?
This is so unique. I mean, like, it's so weird because I just go and show up and it's like, all right, board game night, play it. All right, sure. Yell, scream at each other, but at the same time, at the end of it all, we laugh and, onto the next board game, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's why Commander, it's so weird because there's so many gray areas. So, like, there's a lot of things that are just, like, so weird, like having to sit down before you play your game, have this 30-minute discussion and just kind of go over the rules of what you want to see and what you don't want to see. Well, it's like, well, I mean, that'd be like if we played Catan and you were like, hey, Krim, so you can't cut off my longest road, okay? I'm like, why not?
Well, I somewhat disagree with this because Commander to me feels like a board game where everybody brings their own half of the board, and then you
Right.
have to kind of like Catan is more like, imagine if you all drafted from the same card pool and then you played the game together, and then it's like, well, we're all playing with the same pieces. But Commander's kind of unique where like your deck is kind of like the pieces that you've brought to the board, and then everybody has to agree upon, well, are these pieces balanced with the others, or rather the more important question, are these pieces bringing a net fun to the board game, if we're keeping with that analogy or not, if that makes sense. So I feel like you have to talk about it a little bit.
I think you can talk about it a little bit, but at some point, every board game, the net fun, like I think that on its own, right? The net fun, therein lies the problem, right? Everyone's just like, everyone needs to have like the same amount of fun, but at some point, a game does end, right? And someone will run away with something, someone will do something, and like how they get there may like example, like cut Seth off for longest road, and it's like, I cut him off from getting points. Like that's just how some people play, and it's fine. It's part of the game. Yeah, you got strip mined. So I don't know. I think that is like a big problem, right? Like it's like the net fun that everyone should have, and it's like, well, at that point, then I feel like we have to go into like spreadsheets of like, well, everybody has to make sure they have to have at least 5 points of fun through a game, right? It's like, oh boy, everyone has to hit that quota before we can do anything. So I don't know. Like this is the one thing that's weird about Commander. I'm not even spiky. That's the funny thing. I'm like I think at some point the game does need to end and things have to progress. So I don't know why, or and people interact and do things, right? It's like, okay, I don't know, like what do you want, right? Like what do you want? I don't.
Yeah, I think so. The conversation happens in like literally 10 seconds in everything else. You play pickup basketball. The 6'5" guy comes over. He's like, I'm a collegiate athlete. You're like, okay, so I guess it's like 5v1, right?
Yeah.
And like that's it, right? Or if you are the collegiate athlete, you're like, hey guys, I'm like all pro at my school. And then you like it's sorted out instantly, right? Or you're playing, video games, and some guy's like, I used to be a StarCraft pro gamer, so we gotta do free for all or something, right? We can't 1v1; it'll be ridiculous, right? And it exists in Magic to an extent, right? If you bring a CDH list, you're gonna tell people it's CDH, right? Or if I play with my friends, I'm like, hey, I do Magic for a living, and my collection is worth like $10,000. Your pre-con decks, you're gonna have to gang up on me, right? To like even up on this, right? Like I think that is acceptable. I don't think asking whether my 3-drop is above the curve for power level, there's this big debate on Reddit about Turgrid and like, I'm running these cards but not those cards. Is this good? Like maybe one person can do it for one card, but if you have 5 cards in your deck and there's 4 people, you have like an hour-long podcast before you even start the game, right? So I think that's not acceptable. And that's where the ground rules come in.
It's just not possible.
Yeah.
It's also, I regularly go over Rule 0 conversation when I'm basically like, whenever somebody wants me on their stream or whatever, they usually will like set up a group chat or something like that. And everybody will be like, all right, what power level, they'll have a couple questions. They'll be like, what power level do you want it to be? Are infinites okay? Is MLD okay, or whatever like that? And we usually like share our decks or whatever we want to be playing, and like one person will share a deck, the other people won't respond. It's like, all right, well, I guess I'm just gonna run this, pick something that's like close enough, like that's how it works. So there's like some wasted time on Discord or whatever ahead of the stream, so everybody brings in something that's like relatively balanced. But I can tell you from like a lot of experience, because I've done this many times with a lot of different groups, the first game, the first 2 games, you're just kind of figuring it out. It's not going to be a balanced experience. Some people will be like, oh, I guess like playing obliterates in my deck or whatever, Jokel hops or something wasn't that cool. I know now for the next game, like. Yeah, so the rule 0 thing first, like I think we've all kind of agreed that, like, first of all, it's not very practical for an actual like sitting down and doing this every single time. And I also feel like it just kind of like the best way to get rule 0 out is just to play the game with people multiple times. And so like once you've done that, you don't need the ban list. So again, the ban list, what is it for? What is it for? And they're apparently like it's for people who already have the social contract, which I'm like, So I guess to keep this moving forward, for the updates in particular, they did mention Turgid, Dockside, and Oracle. Did you want any of these banned? Why not? Is this good? Is this bad?
So for me, Dockside, I think, it really should have never been printed, honestly. Like, I think that was like pretty clearly a mistake from Wizards, which I think means they should probably ban it. It's one of those cards that's just it's so powerful in so many situations that even if you try to play it fairly, which I've done, watched some of last season's Commander Clash episodes, there's certainly decks where I just play it for value, and it still ends up like, oh, it combos off, and I stole someone's Scarab God, and I reanimate it, and next thing you know, I have 70 mana, and I'm just like winning the game out of nowhere. So I think the Dockside, I would definitely support it being banned. The other two are a little trickier. Oracle, I feel like, is problematic in CDH, but I don't know. Maybe I'm biased because of our play group where none of us really play Brutal Thassa's Oracle combos, and when it does show up, it's mostly is like a Laboratory Maniac is a fair card where it's like, I might draw my deck, or I'm some sort of self-mill strategy rather than a combo piece. I think that's how most people play it in like mid-power games, and I think that's probably fine. Like, if people started to play it, Thoracle style, then it would probably be a problem. In Turgid, I've seen it like once. I don't know. Like, probably if we had a play group where we had a limited amount of decks rather than playing a different deck each week, and one person was a Turgid player that was constantly wrecking me, maybe I'd probably want it banned. But my experience has been that once in a while it can be obnoxious, but if you play against it once in a while, I don't think it's a big deal.
I think the only thing that should have been on there that should have been banned out of those cards was just Dockside. Dockside is just absurd. It's like, my thing here is Turgid, and like, what's the other card? Turgid and Thoracle. These are all just like win cons. There's lots of win cons and things like that inside like Commander, right? There's already a bunch of broken things running around that can end the game. That's fine. The thing here is I have a problem more so with Dockside being such a big enabler. Like, and it goes in any and every archetype, right? Like, that can play it, it just goes in there, right? So I think that just makes it kind of boring, and that like it is just such a boost, a quick shot of like just like resources for such a low investment, and just that's the problem. It's a huge enabler, and like win cons exist everywhere. That's fine. I don't care about any of those other cards. That's fine to me. If you play them all, you can play them all day long. Dockside though, it's just busted. That card is just super duper broken.
Yeah, I don't care too much either way for Dockside, but they should be consistent, right? If their reason for banning Primeval Titan was it's too powerful, the game devolves into blinking and copying and stealing Primetime. This happens at 2 mana, right? Like,
and immediately, like, just the same
exactly.
turn.
You don't need to attack, like. So it's
don't
like
they enter
not
the battlefield tapped even? Like, it's like
it's not consistent at all, right? So either you say we're going to curb the power level and we ban them all, or you say anything goes and you unban them all. Like, I don't see why Primetime is banned while Dockside is unbanned. Either they're both banned or none are banned or something like that, right? So I don't understand this. And also they said they're not banning for power level, whatever that means, right? So...
Well, Dockside's offensive on every axis, right? Power level and fun, right? Like, it's just like, it is offensive on every level.
If something is so powerful, it's not fun, right? So I don't know how you can say you
Fun
can't
according
ban
to
power
who,
level.
though? The RC? Maybe the RC likes it. I don't know. That's also like the main issue. Like, I agree with Richard. It's like, it's a consistency thing. It's like, if Dockside is okay, why isn't something like Primetime okay? They also do grandfather banning, where they keep stuff banned even though like their current criteria wouldn't have it banned today. They just keep it there because they don't think they don't think it has value to the format. The lack of consistency on any of these bans are just absolutely mind-boggling to me. It really feels like just like whatever the whim these like 4 people just assume is or isn't good for the format, and they're just kind of lazy about unbanning stuff. Like, that's what my takeaway is right now. Like,
Yeah.
all right, and somebody else, I'm gonna sip away my anger.
I mean, we talked about that a lot when we did the podcast going through the entire ban list, where I think all of our biggest takeaway was like lack of consistency. And I think that's still true and not changing. I do wonder if there's some bias, like with the RC being biased towards how they play Commander or their play group. That's something that we've kind of thought and mentioned in the past to some cases, but it does really make me wonder if like how their games happen when they meet every week to play with their play group. Like, is that what's controlling this entire format, that millions of players are playing, or is that having an outsized impact on how this format is run? And is that even a good thing at this point when you got a format that has millions of players? Because that's kind of how it feels. Like this really small, fairly insular group of a handful of people just kind of rules the whole thing, like a monarchy or something.
Are we going to the part where we poo-poo the RC? So I actually want to say this and be very clear. So the individuals on the RC, like, they're doing the best they can given the circumstances, right? But they should not be in the situation. Like, Hasbro is like, what, a $10-12 billion company? Half of that is Wizards. Say half of that is Commander. You basically have 4 volunteers wielding like, $3-4 billion. That is ridiculous, right? Wizards should have a full-time team of like 30 people constantly researching, surveying, experimenting, whatever, balancing the format, and not rely on 4 people that have day jobs, that have no affiliation with your company, actually have no repercussions for doing a bad job or a good job, right? So, Wizards should take control of this. And, if we think the RC is doing a good job, they should hire them and like formally expand that team and have them work full time. If they think they're not doing a good job, then implement their own team to do it, right? But the fact that so much money is in the hands of these like random volunteers is quite ridiculous, right? And as a Hasbro shareholder, I would be quite terrified, right? Like one wrong misstep, right? And there goes like a quarter of your company, right?
I think it might have made sense 10 years ago, like when Commander was just starting and it was, judges playing EDH in the back rooms at GPs and stuff. But it's just gotten so big and there's so many people playing it and there's so many products being made for it that I definitely agree with Richard that I think you got to at least consider having more than a team of, volunteers that are the final say over the format. I'm surprised that Wizards hasn't done something with that at this point, with how much effort and money Wizards is pouring into the format. I'm surprised they're okay with having a group of volunteers that end up being the rule makers for such an important part of their business.
I mean, this is such a weird thing, right? Because like no matter what, people are not going to be happy with them. But yeah, like much like what Richard had mentioned, I do think they should probably just either hire them on like the RC, make them and like see how they'd be in like a design space and kind of like a little bit more hands-on. I think that'd be interesting, or just kind of do your own thing, like as in like WotC just takes control of the ban list and like the RC it's essentially themselves.
I kind of agree with that as well. Like when many years ago, if you asked me like, should Wizards of the Coast take over the ban list, I would have said no, because the Wizards of the Coast has the primary motive is to make money. So they would maybe make changes to the format that were detrimental in the long term for short-term profits. Like they'd maybe if they had access to the rules, like if they just had full say of the format, they could push out really powerful chase cards to sell whatever sets they want. And then they could make sure that those cards would never get banned, or at least they wouldn't get banned for the time frame that they're still making profit off sales off that card. And then afterwards, they can be like, all right, well, now we ban it. But now that I've seen many years later, I don't feel like the rules committee does really anything differently than what Wizards of the Coast would be doing right now. Like, I don't think the RC would be like, hey, this chase card that you printed, it's too much and it's too powerful and it's warping the format in a way that we deemed unhealthy. Therefore, we're banning it. We're putting our foot down. I feel like that's just not something we're ever going to see. And like I kind of see with Golos. Like I don't think if Golos is printed immediately after a couple months they just ban it. They had to wait a long time for Golos to get banned, and I feel like it was probably with the blessings of Wizards of the Coast at that point. So I think at this point I just hand it over to Wizards of the Coast. Like I don't think there's going to be much changes, and if there are changes, it's going to be changes for the better. Like at least Wizards of the Coast has like data to like actually make some consistency there, or hire them. Like if they're doing a good job, hire them.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like
they would be looking at.
Well, I mean, they would have to have like Moto data of like games played, cards played. I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff that they would have access to for Magic Online in specific that would hopefully be able to guide some of these banning decisions. Like you might be able to have a more objective answer to like, does Dockside need to be banned? If you can look and see like this many people are playing it, this is how often that person won the game, which is something that I don't think the rules committee has. I mean, they probably do to the same extent that everyone else who has a play group has. Like we have the ability to look at our Commander Clash games and do stats episodes, and I'm sure that they have the ability to do that with their games and make the best decision possible based on that. But that's not the same as having millions of games of data, which Wizards would have access to. So I almost feel like it would benefit the RC if they were hired and officially part of Wizards, because then they would have way more tools to do their job, essentially, I would assume.
I would then think, though, then they would have, like, this is, because small indie company, Wizards of the Coast, doesn't actually, I don't know if they, like, at that point, if they hire on the RC, right, to do all of this, I think they're going to need a bigger team.
Yeah.
They're going to need a lot bigger team, right? And that's going to then lead to a lot more money, although I'm sure that'd be like a drop in the bucket for them. But I think that legitimately, yeah, like they would need a bigger team. And that's probably why they're not doing that.
What if I told you Standard was governed by like a handful of volunteers, right? You'd be like, what the heck?
You
right?
like explained so much.
Yeah, or like, yeah. What if
like full-time jobs? They should be traveling the country. They should be in a car, every continent, going to every LGS, playing games, asking people, surveying people, like grabbing data, right? Like. But they're not. They have full-time jobs and they play a couple games a week. It's like if we made the ban list, right? Like, oh, we've played like hundreds of games of Commander. I'm like, no, I would never want to make the ban list. That's ridiculous, right? I haven't put the effort and time that's necessary, right? I don't have access to data.
You know how fast I put risk study on that ban list, Richard? It would be like, day one, boom.
Right? For our casual play group, it's fine. But to control literally the whole format for millions of players, that is not enough effort, right? So they do need to hire them and scale the team up, right? Like not just
It's also
one intern.
It's also like compared to like the last decade, right? Like Commander from a decade ago versus Commander now. Just imagine how many more players we've had. It just makes sense that you would have a bigger team. Like
This is a little bit of, I guess, my tinfoil hat on, I guess, but I think it's just because, like, yo, we need scapegoats. We're just gonna let them be the scapegoats.
That might. I mean,
fair.
right? They do have an impossible job. Like the RC, like
Right?
they're in a no-win situation. You don't ban it, you do ban it,
Right?
and I would not want to. I would not want their job. And I think, considering that, I think they do the best job that they can with the resources
Yeah.
they have and in the situation. So definitely not a bashing the RC thing. I like every RC person I've met. I like a lot. So this isn't a
Yeah.
bashing the RC thing. But to go back to what you said earlier, Krim, like, if Wizards would have to invest a ton to hire more people to make the Commander rules work, that's probably a good sign that the current system isn't really able to meet the needs of such a big format. Like, because right now the RC has even less resources than they would have if they were at Wizards and had their data. So maybe that means something needs to change. I also wanted to ask you guys, like, what makes the RC legitimate? Why do we listen to the RC?
because
They're
Wizards
not
said so.
like
They're
like
in
yeah,
partnership
Wizard
with
says those are the
Wizards?
rules, right?
Like, it's
The
kinda
RC
like
makes the
they-
ban list.
they're historically were important to the format because they had a lot to do with its development, but it's not like it's an elected body that like rules the format or anything. It's just kind of like they made the website. Like, couldn't someone else just be like, hey, RC 2.0 and I made my own website with my own ban list? And wouldn't that be equally legitimate if people listened to them?
I think, but the Wizards of the Coast grants the RC legitimacy, right? Like, whatever changes they make, like if they say Golos is banned, then the official ban list is updated. And Wizards of the Coast is like, yeah, Golos is banned. We're gonna code that into Magic Online as well. You know, like you can't play with Golos anymore.
I guess that's,
Now,
so are they
I
part of
assume Wizards of
Wizards
the Coast-
already then? Like, should we just view them as a branch of Wizards? Like, if Wizards just does what they say, and we know that they get input on like new card designs. We've heard some stories about like Lutri, they ran by the RC before printing it, and that was like figured out ahead of time. Like, are they already a part of Wizards, and it's just this weird relationship that we don't really see, you know, in public, but behind the scenes, the RC is just part of Wizards?
I
Well,
think that
one-
could be true, right? It's probably just like contracts, legal work, lots of things like that. That's probably just like, you know what? It's easier if we just, you know, do things a little like, you know, unofficially, but yet officially, you know? So
I want
mean,
to combine
yeah,
all your theories. Like, I think Krim's conspiracy theory is right, that Wizards is guiding them behind the scenes, and Wizards is using them as a scapegoat. But also, like, there's no actual real resources being devoted to balancing the format. They're just using them, and like, because remember when silver bordered cards, what was it, Unglued or whatever came out?
Yeah.
And then RC is like, oh yes, for like a month we're gonna make silver bordered cards legal. Like, that is 100,000% a
Wizards.
WotC initiative, right? So like
Had to be.
WotC was clearly behind that in some way. So I think they just have no resources to this, and they just use the RC, and RC does what they are told, and then are scapegoated and crucified for all the problems with the format.
Well, it's not even a conspiracy theory. Isn't one of the people on the RC is a Wizards of the Coast employee already. So, and then also I know Sheldon, one of the RC people, again also was invited to work on one of the Strixhaven commander decks, the Silver Quail Statement deck. So a lot of his designs have shown up on the cards as well. So he was literally hired to work on Commander in a formal
How
way.
does he have time to do that if he's spending his time balancing Commander, Tomer?
So if we all sort of think that the RC is heavily connected to Wizards, are we in the wrong to even frame this as being about the RC at all? Like, when we read this announcement and we're kind of like, you know, the social contract thing, maybe they should have banned Dockside. Like, is it Wizards we should be pointing the finger at? Like, if they actually are pulling the strings and they're the puppet masters, like, is Wizards doing a poor job managing Commander, and we're just weird scapegoating the RC because we're blaming them for the, you know, decisions Wizards is making?
You don't have to get conspiratorial though, because like Wizards of the Coast could at any given time just formally take over, right? They'll be like, no, only full-time Wizards of the Coast employees are going to be working on the ban list. They could do that whenever they want, and they choose not to. So, like, if we want to say, things are not good, then really at the end of the day, it's the buck, or I was going to say the puck stops on the Wizards of the Coast. Is that a phrase?
That's the Canadian version. I think it's a buck stops.
Yeah, the buck stops here. Well, the buck stops with them.
Here, Tober. The buck stops here.
Well, the hockey puck stops with them, all right? So like that's not conspiratorial. Like like we're focusing on the RC, but this is really a Wizards of the Coast issue thing. And
I mean,
all right,
I do wonder, like, example, like when we complain about a certain card, right? Like how much. This is another thing, right? This is why it's kind of annoying. I think it's why I want it all under one roof. Like I want it just all under WotC or something, or because. All right. Well, when we complain about a card, how much does the RC actually get to like have a say in it? Like they're like, okay, well, hey, we want Dockside banned, or people have been restless about Dockside. They're like, well, do we need to ban it right now? Like we could wait a little bit longer. Like I can't help but wonder if how much of this is just like the RC waiting for WotC to give them the green light.
Yeah. I mean,
it could be that they're just puppets at this point. Like, I think that's the implication there, is that, like, they don't really have a say on anything, or they're just, giving feedback. Because I know they also gave feedback on, like, Commander Legends. Like, a lot of people, also on the CAG, on the Commander Advisory Group, saw cards like Jeweled Lotus, and they're like, no, this card is very powerful. Please don't print it. And the Wizards of the Coast was like, we're gonna make it, and it's gonna make a lot of money. So screw you guys.
Card's not that good.
I mean,
it's not that good. Okay, it's not. It's terrible.
It's just okay. It's just okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, the same could have happened with Dockside, I guess. What if it was Dockside?
No. Dockside is just so offensive that's why I think this is like something where like WotC, like RC has to just bring it to WotC. WotC sits there, tanks on it for like a year and a half, like how they do with most bannings. Like they waited a month before Jace the Mind Sculptor essentially rotated to ban him, right? So, like, I don't know. Like that's obviously like mainline, but then RC I feel like is the same. Like they're probably just sitting there and they're just like kind of just in the middle and they're waiting for WotC to say something.
I mean, if you want the tinfoil hat, they might be reprinting Dockside in Commander Legends 2, and that might be a reason why Wizards would be like, no. Like, if Wizards is making the choice, why would you want to ban a $70 card that's about to sell a whole bunch of boosters? So, I don't know. That seems like a theoretical possibility.
Well, I guess we'll find out for Commander Legends 2,
I mean,
right?
we'll see. Yeah. We got a couple months to go. We'll find out.
So we started the podcast talking about the RC's decisions on this thing, and we basically said like we don't like where the ban list is being focused on, like the purpose of the ban list. We said it shouldn't be on people who don't have a social contract, or it shouldn't be focused on people who already have a social contract, because that's literally the opposite of what they should be doing. They should be focusing on the people who don't have as strong of a social contract, people who are doing pickup games. And now we went basically on whether or not the RC even has any responsibility whatsoever, or are they just advisors to whatever the Wizards of the Coast is saying. And I think that's valid, but like I feel like we have to take whatever they have in, like, we have to take their whatever they state at face value, because I mean these are conspiracies, right? Like if they have a stated goal, that's the only thing that we can really critique tangentially.
Yeah.
The puck stops with them is what I'm trying to say.
The puck stops here. Yeah, for sure.
So to swing it back to that, I want to swing it back to that for a second, and I wanted to ask. Basically, what are we looking for the ban list to accomplish? Like, is the current ban list as stated by the RC, assuming they have the power to shape it however they will? Are you happy with what the ban list is doing, and what would you want a ban list to do? Like, if you were the RC and you weren't a puppet of Wizards of the Coast and your law was final, what would be a ban list that you would be looking for? What is the stated goal of the ban list? Not what particular cards, but what would be your stated goal?
I mean,
would they have access to the resources? Like, would
Yes.
they have like, okay, then in that case, if they have access to the resources, hear me out. Wild idea. What if we did ban based on power? Whoa, my bad. I know.
But then Sol Ring.
Oh
about
no, Sol Ring's gone.
You can grandfather in like legacy grandfathers in Brainstorm, and then ban everything new based on power, right? You're like, this is format staple defining card. I guess that's okay. But don't print new Sol Rings every set, right? Like, don't make the colored
Jewel
Sol
Lotus.
Ring in Commander
Oh,
Legends
Richard,
too.
you know they're printing another Sol
I
Ring
think
in
that
Commander
actually-
Legends too. You know it's gonna happen. When they just made a Black Lotus, you think they're not gonna make a Sol Ring Electric Boogaloo? You don't think though?
I think that there is merit to that though, right? Like, if you now go and just ban based on power, okay, let's say you grandfather in Sol Ring, right? Because it's the face of the format, I guess. But I think what you could then kind of like keep an eye on is anything that's specifically Commander targeted, like Commander Legends, supplemental products. Be willing to just ban from those forward, because that's when you start like kind of like I like Commander specific cards. I love Fierce Guardianship. I love things like that. So I don't want them to stop doing that, but just like I don't want them to stop doing that, I do also want them to be a little more aggressive about like kicking things out of the format if it does kind of run wild, right? Like, Dockside is from a Commander deck.
Yeah.
So, like, that is a Commander product. So if you're going to make specifically Commander product, you should be ready to ban and, like, patch things up.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with the power level thing. I think the idea that power isn't part of the bannings is kind of silly as it is. Like, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense to me. I would also say I would rather have the ban list be focused on the people that don't have a strong social contract. To wrap about what we talked about in the beginning, like, don't focus your bannings on the Commander Clash play group. Like, we don't need your help to manage our games. Focus on the people that really do need it. Those random pickup games or new players that might not have that strong social contract. So I think you want to focus on that. I think either more bannings, as Krim said, or no bannings. Like, if you want to take it to the extreme, the other direction, and just be like, hey, rule 0, social contract. Like, if that's the thinking, then you don't really have to ban anything. So either ban more aggressively and really control the format and make it about people who don't have the strong social contract, or go the other direction and just be like, rule 0 everything, nothing is banned, this is all unnecessary, figure it out on your own. Have that hour-long conversation. If you can talk the rest of the playgroup into Black Lotus, go for it.
No, Seth, you need to read these 20 articles about Rule 0 and the social contract before you pick up a game of Commander. That's the real solution. If only we have long Twitter discourses, hour-long every single week, and you just keep up with the latest discourse, then you will be able to play Commander in 2025. All right? You just need
Perfect.
to keep working
As
on
someone
it.
just getting into the game and hearing about
Yes.
Commander from all my friends, I am
Look, I'll
so
print-
excited
I'll
to
print out
do
a stack of essays that you need to read before you can play Commander.
I do worry that that'll
Totally.
intimidate new players, but go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in a perfect world, the ban list should encapsulate all the tribal knowledge we have as Commander players. So there's a whole bunch of taboos and like stuff you wouldn't know as a casual person, right? Like, Armageddon is legal. You play Armageddon, everyone will give you the stink eye and like leave, right? It should be banned, right? It should be banned. Like, a new player should not be like, oh, this looks like a cool card, let me play it. Go play it. Everyone hates their guts, and they're like, what happened, right? Like, that's stupid, right? That's what the ban list is supposed to codify, right? Like, all these things as a community we've decided are bad should be banned. Like, if everyone thinks Dockside is terrible, you should ban it rather than allow someone to play it and then get, basically hated on, right? And they basically got to be like, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Like, that's dumb, right? Like, just codify it and then call it a day. But they don't want to codify it, and then it'll continue to be this like us versus them, right? Are you in the cool commander crowd? Do you know all our secret rules? If you don't, then get out, right? Like that's the opposite of welcoming. So the ban list is supposed to accomplish that. And as long as Armageddon is not banned, like it's a farce, right? Like unless for some reason I can walk in and Armageddon everyone and they're happy about it. Like you're not allowed to play that. Explicitly make that the rule so no one does it by accident. Right?
And then you can rule 0 it if your
Yes.
playgroup is cool with it and you want to try it out.
Exactly, right?
How about that? What
it's
a
so
wild
much easier
concept.
to err to the side of caution, right? If you just ban it now, right, you don't have to worry about it. And then if a group does have the social contract, yeah, they can just easily put it in their decks.
I think I totally agree with what Seth said, where it's either you make a ban list that works for people for pickup games and is consistent and it is trying to achieve a stated goal, or you just unban everything. There's not this wishy-washy signpost bans or grandfather bans, all this nonsense, or relying on the rule 0 as your crutch and being like, here, read these 50 articles before you can play the game, then have a half-hour conversation before you shuffle up. No, that's not how you grow a healthy format. Nobody's gonna do it. People don't even know that there is a rules committee. Like if you ask the average commander player, they don't know what the rules committee is. They just know that there's a ban list, and sometimes they don't even know what the ban cards are. Like you have to make it as direct as possible and as simple as possible without all this extra work. And I think the ban list is very useful in that regard, as long as you're aiming for new players who do not have like the established rule 0 talk with their playgroup or all that nonsense. You have to aim it at those people, because those are the people who are going to be the lifeblood of Commander and is going to make sure that the Commander format continues to grow. You're not aiming it at the people who are already 10 years invested in Commander and have played games with their own playgroup for 5+ years and know exactly what cards are good and not good for them. Like, no, that's not where you're supposed to be aiming the ban list at. So I think that's really important. And if you are going to be saying like, oh, these cards are fine and these cards aren't fine, even though they do the exact same thing, or it's like, Mana Crypt is like this holy sacred cow that we can't ban, or Dockside isn't, but Hull Breacher is the worst thing ever, but that's fine or whatever. Golos is the real issue here. Then just unban everything. Just unban the Black Lotus, unban the Moxen. If you think the format is just about big flashy plays, which I know a lot of people on the RC and on the CAG say fast man is integral to the format being super sweet. Big explosive plays are big super sweet. Then unban everything. Like, why this halfway approach? This lack of consistency, like completely throws me off. Like, it's like, what is the point of all this? I thought it was really good to get off my chest. I feel so much better.
It was due for a good Tomer rat. I also wanted to say, reading all this and talking about all this, I feel like the current setup is a little bit biased towards experienced players and against new players. One thing that drives me a little bit crazy is when you read through all this stuff, the solutions to a lot of it sound like, have a bunch of money and have a bunch of decks. Like, if you want to play Commander, like, you have this conversation, and if someone vetoes your deck, well, then just pull out your backup deck. And if they don't like that one, then pull up your backup deck. And I don't think that's like realistic for someone who's joining the game. Like, if we want this format to be welcoming to new players, and it seems like Wizards is trying to onboard people into the game as a whole through Commander now. This is the starting point format. I don't think it's realistic for us to expect like everyone to have 10 decks so they can, shuffle through and find the exact right matching power level. Like, some people just want to play a Commander game. And I think especially for new players, I wish we were more accommodating to them. And I think the inconsistencies, the idea that like, just like take out that card and add in some other cards because you must have millions of cards, or just, don't play that deck and play your other deck because you got millions of decks. Like, I think it's pretty unfriendly towards new players for a format that is like the starting point for a lot of players now. Like, this is the first format a lot of people are going to play.
No, that's very true. Remember when we were at Vegas? I had some people that just come up and they were like, I was like, what kind of power level do you want to play with? They're like, I don't really know what my deck is. And I'm like, okay. So then and if it weren't for the fact that I've been playing since I was in like elementary school, I was like, okay, well, I'll just try to find a deck that can accommodate the power level that I think you're probably playing at. But you have to have like been playing the game for like 20 years, right? To even have that kind of collection. So, and like the average person will just be like, I don't know, I just have this deck and I threw cards in there that I like. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and it's that's why I think like the ban list, they should be aggressively banning. Again, like unbanning thing that still puts us still in the same spot with chaos at least, but I do think that aggressively banning does kind of like put us like a lot more structure on the format, and I think that's what it just needs. Anything taboo, just ban it. Like
it's also crazy to me how little the ban list has expanded over the years, despite the exponential growth of new commander cards, influx of commander cards coming into the format. Like, can you imagine any other format, having such a lack of banning in terms of just like the sheer number of new cards? Where like even the standard cards are now commander forward, right? Like that's where we're at. So we have like, I don't even know how many unique cards entering the format every single year now. It's like crazy, unprecedented, and yet the ban list doesn't really meet that. And then the question is like, what's the point of the ban list? Like you have to expand it, right? Like there's going to be more problematic cards. Even a Wizards of the Coast was like being absolutely perfect, and they never want to ever print a broken card ever again in Commander. Just the sheer number of cards means that it's inevitably going to be happening, even despite their best interests. Like they never want to break standard, for example. They didn't want to make Oko break everything. It just happened, And then like imagine just like Commander, even if they wanted to never ever make a chase rare that would break the format, it's gonna happen just because of how many cards they're adding, and yet we're just being like, busted stuff is fine, embrace it. But then like think about it, a new player, it's like you show up with your precon and everybody's playing busted stuff, and you're like, well, I got destroyed. I guess my precon's not good enough. I guess I'm just not allowed to. I guess I have to spend like $500. Now screw that. I'm going to do go into a different hobby. And it's like, well, the ban list should foster a baseline experience, right? But it doesn't. It does not. Well, that was a happy podcast. Yay! So any closing thoughts? Anybody? Anything you want to add before we wrap this podcast up? Any takeaways?
I think the takeaway is please ban Dockside. like legitimately, please. Oh my God, ban Dockside.
I would not shed a tear for Dockside, but I also want a Crypticon too. I'm at the point where if you want to say Sol Ring isn't banned because it's getting grandfathered in and that's the only exception ever and everything else is fair game, then I'll be like, I'll take it. I'll take it at this point. I think it's still very ban worthy, but just get rid of the rest. Get rid of Crypt. Get rid of Dockside.
But
at the very least.
I think my final thought would be, the podcast might have came across a little harsh at some points, but Commander is pretty awesome. Like, don't let this podcast make it sound like Commander is some horrible mess. It's not like Hogak Modern or something where the format's falling apart. No one wants to play it. It's like, there's certainly things that can be done to improve it, and that's what we're kind of talking about today. But don't take this to mean that, like, Commander's in some horrible place, especially if you're someone who mostly plays 60 card formats and you're thinking, oh no, like, Dockside, really, everyone's saying it really needs to be banned. It's probably ruining the format. Like, Commander doesn't really work that way to the same extent that 60 card formats do, so definitely could use improvements, and we can always do better, but Commander is still, like, it's still really fun right now, and I think everyone's having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I would echo Seth. We're taking a fun thing and trying to make it more fun. But like for all this talk about ban lists and social contracts, I jam games on Moto all the time where like people don't even know how to use like the yield keys. And I've never had a problem in a pickup game with power level or like ban cards or like if someone plays a Dockside, like either they win on the spot or everyone murders them. Like, I don't know. Right. Yeah. And like we move like, people are very loose with their power definitions. And I think the games are fun. I don't know. It's not like crumbling. It's not like I'm playing standard or something. Right. So I think this is just like us nitpicking. Right. And I do want to say that it's not the individuals on the RC's fault in any of this. Like if I was on the RC, doing this as volunteer work, I would do equally as the same job that we're criticizing, right?
I do worse,
because you should really have a team of like 50 people doing this full time rather than 4 volunteers, right? And they're doing with what they have, right? But so I think Tomer's point of it's on Wizards, right? Wizards can pull the plug anytime, but they're choosing not to, right? So at the end of the day, it's Wizards' fault, and I think they should actually do something about it just to signal they care, right? Like, and they could just hire the RC and then augment them with more resources, right? Like that would be the win-win, right? So yeah, don't take this as us being like harsh on the RC individually, right? It's more of a critique of Wizards.
And like I think like, well, this year, right? We're not like, I mean, just a few podcasts ago, right? We had already talked about it. Like the commander's like amazing. I know that I believe Richard even were saying that we would rather play Commander as it is in present day than like 2013, right? Or something like that. So like Commander has made big strides, and it's dared to like make new cards and new mechanics and new things like that. And I want them to keep doing that. Just be ready to axe it if it goes wild. That's all.
Yeah. And I definitely did a poor job kind of framing everything in terms of perspective overall on the format. As you guys mentioned, Commander's doing a great job right now. Commander's thriving. It's as popular as it's ever been, really. So objectively speaking, Commander's in a really good place right now. I think the main criticism just comes from like ongoing frustrations from nitpicking, and that's important to say. Like, Commander's still super fun. I play Commander. I'm going to be playing 3 times a week, and I'm going to be really enjoying it every single time. I stream once a week. I do a Commander Quickie every Tuesday recording, and I'm going to be recording with Commander Clash as well on Thursdays. So I'm playing 3 times a week. I've never dreaded playing Commander. I've never been like, ugh, going back to work. I'm always really excited for it, and I've been doing this for years and years and years. Like, I love Commander. I'm having a super fun time. If I wasn't, then I wouldn't be doing my job, right? But that's an important context. And the RC is doing as well as they can. And they also get a lot of hate. They get a lot of angry people constantly. And I guess we're, to an extent, I'm one of the people who are giving them a little bit of heat. But I never want to attack the individual person there. I just more of like, their current philosophy with the ban list is what frustrates me. And it was kind of building up, and I really wanted a place to kind of like talk about it constructively, and that's where it is. I'm not going for the 4 people on the ban list. I'm not yelling at any of those people there. They're doing the best they can, and they definitely don't deserve any like hate or anything to the individual. It's just more like, their rules and philosophies are there on the table to be, discussed, and that's what we're trying to do here, not go after specific people. So that's basically it. Like, format's great. Format is objectively thriving, and we have so much content. Ban Dockside, ban Ristic Study, just throwing it out there, just ban it. And also, if you love these cards, like, you can continue jamming these cards. It's absolutely fine. If you want high power games, if you want to have 15 mana on turn 1, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and you're happy to enjoy. You feel free to yell at us also in the comment section if you're like, Dockside is the best thing ever, don't you dare ban it. Like, you can by all means, it's great. But yeah, that's our show, everybody. A long podcast. I promise we're going to be going back onto more lighthearted stuff in the future. But yeah, if you enjoyed this show, be sure to like, subscribe, and all that wherever you're listening / watching this. mtggoldfishmerch.com is where you can support us financially. And until next time, friends, see ya.